Dr. Gale Ridge. I am an insect identifying expert at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. Our offices are open to the public and we serve everyone in the state. So anybody who has a problem or a question about insects, mites, spiders, anything that has more than 4 legs, I and my assistant Catherine are the people most people come to. Somebody walks in and says, "What is this?" And I say, "I haven't seen that before." So then we get very busy trying to figure out where that little visitor has come from, and often from other parts of the world. So I've got my finger on the pulse of entomology identification pretty well worldwide because of my seat. As the years have passed, my work has evolved into research with behavior and traits of the human-feeding bedbugs. And I'm currently in a very large project helping folks with delusions of infestations, which is this belief of being fed on by insects or other pathogens or parasites. And it's very complicated, and it's an international effort to provide information for folks and service providers who are dealing with this particular condition. One more exciting thing is that I am also somewhat skilled in forensic entomology and have been involved in a few murder cases here in Connecticut as well. So this job is far from dull.
Curiosity.
With the identification, I am a listening post or a watch station for the introduction of exotic insects. And one of the more exciting and interesting was a woman brought in a coat rack that hung on a wall that was bought in one of our local stores in Danbury. And she hung it on the wall, and then this powder started to fall out from under it. She brought it in and said, "What's going on?" And what was in it was a population of live powder post beetles. And I looked at them under the scope and said, "These are not our local residents, and where are they coming from?" So tracing back through the line of sale, I found out this particular piece of wood was from East Africa. It had been harvested in East Africa, shipped to India, and then milled and made into this coat hanger in India, and then brought onto the United States and distributed. My work is much like a bloodhound. You know, you get on a scent and you start to follow it, and things like peeling back an onion, things reveal themselves that are hidden, and you begin to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. I have been involved in a couple of murder cases as a forensic entomologist, and so you can imagine that onion was particularly fascinating. I'm a late bloomer. My first career was as a concert pianist and teacher, accompanying or working with music theater, or as a soloist, as an accompanist. And then I came to a point in my life where I was a single mom of 3 young children. And as a professional musician, that doesn't really work very well when you're trying to raise children, because when they're home, you're out working, because music is during the social downtime for the population. Now, we musicians have to wait till the end of the day to do our best work, you know. So it became very difficult to pursue a full-time music career with youngsters. And so at that point, I crossed over into biological sciences. I had an interest because I was actually raised on a farm in West England. And so I grew up in nature and life, and, you know, sort of as an observer from a very young age. So I had that a basic interest. And then the experiment station put out an announcement that they wanted a summer assistant in the entomology department. And this was when I was studying my crossover courses. Because, you know, going from music to science, you know, you got to prove you can do it. And so I answered the ad and got quite fascinated by insects. And no 2 days are the same when you're working with them. There's such variety, and I have thought, well, this will be a fascinating profession to get into, and here I am. I'd come from a life of fine arts and a desire to satisfy curiosity, and with that, a sense of perfection and detail. So that it's a type of thinking, but also having the freedom of creativity and questioning. The wellspring of science is as an art. The worlds even, they may seem very disparate and separate, but the fundamentals are the same. Attention to detail, being a bit of a perfectionist, always curious, always asking questions, and science allows you to be much like a thoroughbred racehorse with a desire to run, and you're running with these ideas and these concepts and on a frame that's secure and firm in principle, and that allows you then to also be very creative. I think science as an art, science as a discipline allows, if you allow it, a presence of mind of being in the moment and being open-minded. Just the revelation of discovery. There's always something you find. And, you know, and science has that powerhouse of information and history that you can build on. One classic myth that is all over the place is that bedbugs feed in straight lines: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, now I'm a bedbug behavior researcher. I look for an Achilles heel in their behavior, which we can get into and use to manage these critters. Most research is how to kill them, but I study their behavior. And so with that knowledge, I can then provide that alternate information that this particular person needs. And so, yes, bed bugs actually are very delicate. They're very fussy feeders. They never feed in a straight line because they are capillary feeders, and we don't have, you know, any straight capillaries in our body. The only instant where I've seen any kind of straight line feeding is if they are, you know, feeding along the line of some clothing. There may be one or two of them that. It's the only time when that would be possibly the case. But that myth has stuck in society's psyche for forever. And once you get initial misinformation, it can stay around and be perpetuated. And so, I deal with this all the time. Most of the conversations I have with folks is stemming from the misinformation that they get off the internet, off these search engines powered by Google, Facebook, Twitter. even YouTube. And it's difficult when somebody gets initial information that's erroneous to then, as the expert they're talking to disengage that connectivity of initial information. It's very powerful. And so my job is to be able to replace that information with correct information. And sometimes it's easier, and sometimes it's more difficult. We're absolutely soaked culturally in this fear of arthropods. When I'm working with people, it's often dealing with situations of anxiety. So rather than talking at them, which is easy, I talk with them rather than I am facing at them, like where you and I are looking at each other. I turn it so that we're side by side. And we walk together along a trail, and I am the guide to their discovery of new information and a new way of looking at it. And often I have people coming back at me at the end of a session, of a visit, and say, oh, they are really, they're kind of cute. Oh, they're cute. You do like them, don't you? And now I can understand, because what I've done is I've got people to understand. I've educated them. And then people go away much more empowered, much happier, much relaxed, and not so intimidated by something they didn't understand when they walked through the door. But one of my early professors, who was actually an expert in possum, and he couldn't figure out why possum, which are basically tropical South American critters, who self-introduced themselves to the United States, could stand the cold up here because they're basically bald. So he was doing research on balding possums. Anyway, when you cross over or start into a new profession, one's antennae are always up, and there's a freshness of interaction. And during that fresh period, he said something that was very profound to me, is that when you're studying a subject, always see the complete canvas. But at the same time, see the detail. So a good analogy is, look at the tree, but also look at the forest. Look at the sky, look at the horizon, but also look at the subject you're talking about. You got to have context. So my feeling with becoming an entomologist is to have a knowledge of ecology and evolution. Much of evolution is driven by research with insects and how they react to the environment and the negative pressures against them, and how quick it can be. With insects, you can actually see in 10 years fundamental changes. So when you're working in evolution, studying the insects and arthropods actually is very revealing, because it can be within one's own career timescale. Because we only have a 40-year, 50-year career time. That's nothing. So, little arthropods are really, remarkable in being able to reveal to us our place in life itself, and how the planet works. And everything goes back to insects. Pilots call insects sky plankton. And at any moment during the summer, if you look up, there's probably about 17 species of arthropods commuting over the top of our heads at any one time. They can move across continents. They can use the winds from Africa to come across the Atlantic to North America. these are just remarkable little creatures. And so if you're going into entomology or entomology associated professions, evolution, ecology are certain aspects you should study, and they're such fun.